Very welcome. It was Salman Rushdie who said that modern British literature has changed for the better because of the writers with funny names, as he called them, that invaded in the British literature since the early 1980s. Until then, you would have your basic Geoffrey Archer novel about three Londoners working for the BBC and having a triangle affair with each other. But a new wind is blowing nowadays by such diverse authors as Kazuo Ishiguro, Hanif Kureishi, Timothy Moe, Vikram Seth, Salman Rushdie himself, and Ben Okri. There you have your funny names. They gave English literature spirit, life, yes, the world. Ben Okri was born in Nigeria in 1959. He grew up as a child in London, where his father studied law. When he was 7 years old, his parents and himself went back to Nigeria. The Biafra War came up and ran literally through their family because his mother was blood related to the Ibo tribe in Biafra. As a teenager, he read the entire bookcase of his father's and started to write himself. Shakespeare was his favorite, along with Homer, Dante, Pascal, and Nietzsche. In Nigeria, he couldn't find a publisher for his first novel, Flowers and Shadows, so he went back to London when he was 19 years old. The book was published there in 1980. Okri studied comparative literature in Essex, but when his money ran out, he often slept rough on the streets. Only years before he got the Booker Prize for his beautiful novel, The Famished Road, he was still drifting through the streets of London with a pack of manuscripts under his arm. Right now, Ben Okri is an acclaimed author, widely seen as the greatest writer coming from Western Africa next to Wole Soyinka. He has an impressive list of works about which we're going to talk to this evening. His fame has reached Holland too, of course. Only yesterday evening he was the honorary guest of a cultural symposium in the Royal Palace on the Dam, where he met Her Majesty Queen Beatrix and His Royal Highness Prince Claus. But already long before that, Okri was famous in our country, not only because his books are translated here by Van Gennep publishers, almost from the beginning of his career, but also because he appeared in Wim Keiser's program Vertrouwd en O Zo Vreemd on VPRO television, together with Mario Vargas Llosa and Joseph Brodsky. Okri told in interviews that years later he was halted in London by Dutch people who told him happily, "We know everything of you." I've got two short fragments to show you from Wim Keiser's television interviews with Ben Okri on the working of the human memory. The first fragment is characteristic, a quote about the visionary and prophetical aspects of literature. The second says much about the way the writer thinks about the structure of a novel. Watch closely, it will be over before you notice it. Can I have the fragments, please?
Sometimes a case of creating the memory of the future. And I think of memory in relation to novels, for example, how it is that some passages you remember more than others, and some passages are written to not be remembered.
I told you it was short. There must be something mystical about literature, the way Ben Okri sees it. In his important book of essays, A Way of Being Free, he wrote 3 essays on the joy of story writing, in which he tells us things like, the great stories choose you to be told, and creativity is a form of praying. In these pieces and in the wonderful essay, Humanity is Not Free Yet, which he wrote for Salman Rushdie, he tells us about the way dreams and stories can equally change the world, while humans themselves are incapable of changing the ways these dreams and stories are. You can't stop a story, even if you find it appalling, and even if it ridicules your faith or religion, because you can't stop a dream either, even if it's a nightmare. In the dreamscape of Ben Okri's literature, there are angels and ghosts, myths and folktales, historical truths and dreamlike visions. This can be seen in his latest book, Infinite Riches, the third part of his Spirit Child trilogy, also called the Azaro trilogy, which consists of The Famous Road, the Booker Prize 1991, Songs of Enchantment, and the new book Infinite Riches. Infinite Riches concludes the story, or Okri would say, continues the dream of Azaro, a name which is short for Lazarus, named so because he was a child. As a child he was nearly buried, but found to be living. On the threshold of a new era, Azaro's world is shattered. His father is arrested for a crime he didn't commit. His mother leads women on a quest for justice, and Azaro, the spirit child itself, vanishes from his parents, visits strange places in the forest outside conventional time frames, watches his father veer from passivity to anger, and his mother from authority to madness. Around him, there's an ecological disaster. The old forest disappears. Dark forces are set free. Ben Okri rewrites history from an African perspective, showing the complexity of the colonial heritage. He does that with enormous skills and an intense poetry-like prose with a wonderful imagination. But most of all, he's a storyteller with enormous creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Ben Okri.
This podium is made for Ed. It's just the right size to hide me. Thank you very much. I think it's important to say, first of all, what a pleasure it is to be here. The fame of the John Adams Institute is indeed worldwide. I've heard about it long before I got invited. And the invitation was increased and enriched by that pre-knowledge of the place. This is a lovely setting in which to read. I'd much rather look up and enjoy it than read, but I've got work to do. I'm a great believer that just because one is in the middle of an experience or the middle of a dream doesn't mean you can't stop and look around at the edges of it. I always say look at the edges of fiction. People look too much at the center of things. It was a great pleasure to hear your introduction, Ed Van Aden. We're not going to get that one wrong. Anna, congratulations on being a grandmother. It's a great feeling. Mom always was so proud whenever she talked about my sister giving birth. It sort of, it roots you, doesn't it? It makes certain all manner of things, all manner of anxieties get healed. So, congrats. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how this evening is going to go. I'm going to range through a whole heap of concerns. You notice on the sheet that you got, we call it literature in a key of music, which is to say it's just going to go the way it's going to go. Mostly poetry tonight, I think. Some prose. As for the discussion later on, we'll see. Everything depends on you. If I missed out anything that I ought to say while I'm here, Rosemary. Roland. Did I miss out anything? Excellent. Okay, here we go, folks. I got a phone call one day from The Guardian. And they're having one of those interminable arguments that they have every now and again in Britain. It never ends. About what is Britishness. I don't know why they ask me to contribute. How would I know? I get asked, and every now and again I respond, and this time I got tired of saying one thing or another, so I thought, oh, I'll write a poem instead. So, here goes. It's called Souls of Nations. The souls of nations do not change. They merely stretch their hidden range. Just as rivers do not sleep, the spirit of empire still runs deep. Into a river many waters flow, the merging and conquest that's history's glow. A gathering of homely and alien streams, a tumble of turbulent and tranquil dreams. Classes overflow their rigid boundaries, slowly stirring mighty quandaries. Accents diverse ring from the land's soul, a richer music revealing what is whole. New pulsings from abroad shake the shores, troubling the sleep of the land's resonant bores. But the gods of the nation do not change. Their ways are deep and often strange. History moves and the surface quivers, but the gods are steadfast in the depth of rivers. Didn't answer the question of Britishness at all, did it? I was on a train. Minding my business. I love trains. And the best thing you can do on a train is mind your business. Chap came and sat opposite me. Brought out a bundle, put it on the table. I looked up from my book. I thought, funny chap. So I proceeded to bring out these coins from this bag. I looked at the coins. I thought, funny coins. He'd hold one up, bring out a monocle, look at it. And he'd look at me. And I thought, funny monocle. After a while, I couldn't bear it. I said, well, what the hell are you doing? He said, just examining my Roman coins. I said, oh, really? You do this often in trains, do you? He said, do you want one? I said, I've got enough money of my own, thank you very much. He said, have one anyway. So he gave me one. I looked at it, turned it round, and I said, this is a coin I've been looking for about 10 years. He says, oh, really? Oh, you can keep it. I said, I've got to give you something back. He said, no, it's okay. I've got to give you something back. He said, no, it's okay. So I said, okay, I'll give you something anyway. So this is what I gave him. It's called on a Roman coin. This smallest token of silver, symbol of a turning age, an empire rolling over from mastery to dust and rage. An encounter on a train, a moment preserved with a coin. Even boredom leaps into interest when travel and money conjoin. We are all divided by money. Behold the map of the magnetized world. Instead of hunger, there should be honey, for around us great power lies curled. In every moment's enrichment, a mysterious face is observed. On the denarii, an emperor's reign, as in amber, is mysteriously conserved. Septimus the Seventh, who died at York, leader of dying Rome, the controller, last of the good colonialists, from the margins, an outsider. How the ages meet on the margins, how blood and history flow. Even now Rome becomes present. On this journey, time seems slow. Money glorifies material time. Iron is transformed by desire, thus hinting at money divine, though infused with material power. We are rich in measureless time, radiantly touched by the sublime, and all our moments flow to rejoin the source of that eternal coin. I'm reading you from a collection that's not yet published, just to frustrate you. Come out next year, I think. So if you come to me and say, can I have a, there's one line I didn't like, but I'd like to look at it again. Could you give it to me? I'd say no. You have to wait for a year, I'm afraid. Just because I like you see. Next poem I'm going to read to you is called Lessons from a Master. And it's to Pablo Picasso. I was wandering through the ceramics exhibition of his that they did in London about a couple of months ago. Did anybody see that, by the way? This is plates and stuff like that. Yeah? Oh, there's one keen Picassoist there. Ah, yeah. And as I wandered through, I just had this feeling that the old master was kind of like whispering to me through these objects that he'd changed and played around with. You just get the feeling that his works they whisper things, they suggest things. And I thought, I'm going to take notes. I'm going to take dictation. I don't know if this is what he said, but this is what I heard. Lessons from a Master. Be influenced by new materials. Multiply your language. Create round the floor. Let the material speak. Create like nature. Impose a form or follow the flow. Be free. Be a master. Work is the true self, playing, breathing, being. Transcend morality. Don't be your censor. There is no destiny or destination in art. Be open to conducive environments. Your work is your world. Don't let your work be a negotiation with the perception or vision of others. In art, you are your demiurge. Do not judge what emerges. Do not falsify your instincts. If it yields the artistic, all media, material, and forms are a legitimate basis. Art is in the eye and shaping hand of the artist. All things have the condition of the artistic inherent in them. With a magic touch, the art will out. Difficulty in creating merely reflects on freedom in the artist. Where there is freedom of spirit, creativity is unbounded. Speak to your material. There is no dead matter in art. There is no negative or positive in art. Only energies that must be. Refresh the basis. Never lose the earth. Don't hold the brush or the pen too tightly. Always give the child something to do. Form follows vision. Form follows temperament. Keep art open, like love. Hold the wheel lightly and conserve more energy. Curves move us. Circular things include us. Shaped things align us. The effect should not be in the work, but in what the work does to you. Inscribe the dance within the spirit of your audience. All art happens within. Art has two powers, the power of itself and the power of what it is working on within you. Thus, a third, multiplying. Art can only create in you what is already within you. as within, so without. In its ceaseless effort to be, multitudinous became their forms. Humor is the relaxation of the anxious intelligence. Humor aspires to higher forms. Vigor hides in humor. Mature energies gather when the artistic spirit in solidity laughs. Manifold usefulness of art in vigorous play. To have no purpose in art can be conducive to creativity. Uselessness is the highest usefulness. The courage to create useless art. What is useless to the artist? Of infinite use to the world. Use and uselessness frequently change places. The highest purpose is to have no purpose. Let the world do the creating, the purpose making. To refresh is as important as to instruct. There is such a thing as artistic libido. Keep yours ever alive. The lust to create. Be a fertile being. Art sexes the mind. Art is a glamorizer of life. Extend the old into the new. Make the new old. Exhilaration. Find your language. Sing forth your epic, the epic of being. Follow the sunlight of your creativity. Art is joy in the river. Time rewarded. A lot of notes. I just hope I was a good secretary. I'm going to drink some water after that. Ah la la. Did you get a few notes when you went to the exhibition? Oh. Well, you owe me a drink then, right? Okay. Okay. I'm going to read you a short poem. And then maybe I'll read you a short manifesto. I did say it was going to be a suite. Don't know what's going to happen tonight. We'll see. Don't know if you ever saw a program I did a couple of years ago called A Journey to Arcadia. Anybody saw that? Oh, great. Wow. Wonderful. Do I get rights for that video you're doing there? Yeah? You make sure you talk to me afterwards. Yeah, all right, good. Roland, keep in touch with that guy. Make sure he doesn't run away. Oh, good. All right. We seize the video afterwards. Isn't that what they do nowadays? Midway through the program, we got to a place called Brindisi, place where Virgil died, place where a great poet dies. Wow, ought to shake you a little bit. Somebody here ought to go run for mayor of Brindisi, if only to give Virgil a decent monument. He doesn't have one. Pokey little thing they've got there. Felt like blowing it up. Probably will. Anyway, afterwards, he came to mind. And I wrote this little short poem about him. It's called Virgil in Brindisi. He drifted into harbor, lying in state, when the wine-drenched sea was clear as a slate. He dreamt of his great poem, Restless in him unfinished, and wept that 12 years beyond death were needed for its perfection to be undiminished. The great emperor, vertical, on another ship against a changing imperial sky, could never have guessed that in his poet's unrest, an eternal world would soar high. Is anybody here who knows the meaning of the word fontanelle? Can somebody explain it to everybody here, please? So I can read this poem in peace. Come on, someone get up. There's a microphone there. Just get up and explain it. Yeah, just stand up and just explain it so they can all get it. Okay. Did you get that? Did everybody get that? No. Can somebody explain? Can you explain it louder, please? Please, 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 please.
The fontanelle is the hole in the head, and when you're born, it's open because of the pressure. It's too big, and then afterwards it closes.
Did you get that? Afterward it closes. Yeah? Did they get that? Right. Fontanelle. This is after my mom passed on. Short poem. From the earth that was still, and the sea that rises beyond the hill, comes that eternity shaking cry of a son whose mother has just died. Before birth there were tears, and after death are lambent fears. Mother, if you return my soul's lost fontanelle, all will be well, like that ancient, magical bell. Shall I do my little manifesto and then we'll have a chat? Or shall I do it afterwards? What do you think? No, I'm going to end here for this round. Is that okay? Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, hi again. I've got 13 questions from the audience right here. But these are not dumb questions, so we'll mix them in between the rest of the conversation, okay?
Well, it's important that you know that I reserve the right to answer or to not answer any questions. Yeah?
Not answering is also a form of answering.
I didn't sign any contract to say that I'll answer any question. Just so long as we remember that.
So then I'll start. Have you got the right to refuse answering my questions too? Or?
Absolutely.
Oh.
More than that, I have a right to answer the question I didn't ask.
Could take a while. Why did it take so long to publish part 3 of the trilogy?
Yeah, just move it towards me rather than me move towards it. It's so much more sensible. Ed, do you want to make me swallow it or something?
Yeah.
That's better. Yeah, do it center. Yes. Now, what was that question again?
The question was, the trilogy that you published part 1 in 1991, Famished Road, part 2, The Songs of Enchantment in 1993, and now we had to wait until 1999 for part 3, The Infinite Riches. Why?
The first part, the first book, I don't think of them as parts as such. For me, they're connected. They're one book, but at the same time, each book is its own unique and particular dream. It's difficult to explain how this happens. I seem able to just pick up the thread from where it left off, even though many years have passed. The first book was just as was both extremely difficult and extremely easy to have written. Don't ask any questions about that. It's just one of those paradoxes. The second book was a shoulder inspiration book. It's a Songs of Enchantment. I think of as the fifth of the trilogy. It's a tough internal book. If you want to know the kind of book Songs of Enchantment is, it's the one that my German publishers didn't get on with.
What your Dutch publisher did.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The Infinite Riches took longer because it was, I think it was more difficult to do.
Why?
I suppose I was dealing with a more tricky part of the history. Each tone had to be different because it's got to do with birth. The whole thing is about not just birth of a nation, but birth of anything. It's the examination of the chaos and creativity the madness and clarity, the rage and simplicity, the multiplicity, hallucination, all of the things involved in birth. Well, talking about birth today seems to be your subject, huh? Involved in birth. We seem to think that a nation, the birth of a nation is just a simple, straightforward thing. Actually, when it's been born from a birth that was already there before, when it's been born from a condition of domination, when it's been freed from something, so it's been born out of an unacceptable condition, you've got a lot of warring internal elements which we rarely examine properly. You know, people read the book and they say peculiar things like, oh, it's full of hallucinations and blah 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 and so on and so forth. You ought to, you know, just takes a bit of imagination to just go into the consciousness of a seed growing on the ground before it emerges completely fully formed as a shoot, or a being forming inside before it emerges with a complete nose and hands and legs and all of that, fully formed. The whole process was complete in hiding. That's what I'm interested in. It's a completeness in hiding, with all of the flaws and the problems and the chaos and the civil war, all the future things that's to come, that's already inside it in its birth. It's if you like, it's the internal epic before the external epic, inner and outer. So this part's difficult because I'm dealing with the historical. I needed a new tone, a new way to link the ordinary, the poetic, the historical, the rage, I'm surprised it didn't take longer. I'm surprised it's here at all. That's it.
Yeah, I know. I just waited to see if there came any more, but the whole trilogy is about a lot of things, but also about balance and disbalance. In part one, you see a strange sort of balance. The ghetto and the people living there are sort of self-contained. There's no real influence from outside, and the father and the son, they just get enough from the spiritual world to get along in their daily lives. That's all gone in part 3. There, the balance is destroyed, and like the woods and the ecology all around, it's like all kinds of ecology are falling apart in part 3. Is that so?
Well, the spiritual element is still there, but it mingles in with the political element. We're talking about the whole Famished cycle, which is about the spirit child. I've always said that, you know, it's my mom's favorite saying that, you know, out of a little acorn, a forest can grow. The size of a thing is not the size of what comes afterwards. It's what is the seed of it. And the spirit child thing was, out of it could come almost everything I wanted to say about the African condition and the non-African condition, about dimensions and this and art and that and blah 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 and blah 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 and so on and so forth, and nothing and something and this and that and interspaces and etc and so on. It could leave me space to meditate, to narrate, to dialectate, to be angry, to be tender, because all of this emerges from the sensitivity of the child that's half spirit and half human. Once you have that combination with all that's human, involving the political, the historical, the failures, the pain, the love, all of that, and then you have the spirit dimension weaving in and out of that, as it does with him. You have a basis for a constantly quivering palette, a constantly quivering canvas. So all of the elements are always there, but it just depends on what hurts the most, what hurts the nation the most, and the fact that it's now quickening towards birth. Everything that quickens towards birth, there's more chaos as well as more harmony. There's more clash. Birth itself is not what we think it is. I don't think it's necessarily a case of a condition wanting to be harmonious as such. It's all these warring, contending opposites and oppositions, some of which come together and some which don't. And so that's that part. It's the most dangerous part of a thing being born. That part where it could not be born, where it could be born, stillborn, or where it could be born deformed.
Yeah. This spiritual world, is that what makes Africa different from Europe?
No, why should it? Europe's got a spiritual world.
Now, everywhere Europeans come, the spiritual world flees.
Oh, no, not really. Not really. It's just that Europe, the only thing that exists really are the things that you see. If you don't see something, it doesn't exist. It really is as simple as that. I mean, some people believe that there's some kind of absolute external reality. But if you don't see a condition, the condition isn't there.
So you just got to be able to see.
If I mean, we largely create our reality, and we're talking about the way in which belief adds to our perception of the world. It's a very contentious thing, but in a sense, consciousness is superstitious. Consciousness creates the world. You get rationalists who say that we can agree on reality, and I say, then why do you call yourself a rationalist? Why do we have language? Why do we have so many languages? Precisely because we cannot agree. We have to constantly come together and say, this is a book. Get it? Book. B-O-O-K. Drum it into the children. But it's important. This idea that we, Goethe says it himself often. It's there when you see it. When you don't see it, it's not there anymore. The killing of a condition is not that you can actually kill it, but you don't see it anymore. You don't give any validity to its existence. The Irish still believe in little people. The Norwegians still believe in trolls.
Trolls, yeah.
Exactly. Some of them.
Some of the trolls or some of the Norwegians?
Some of the trolls still believe in the Norwegians.
And the Dutch?
You tell me.
Oh, I'm asking you. You're
What
the
do
expert.
the Dutch believe in?
Santa Claus. Santa Claus.
Oh, you still believe in Santa Claus?
No, we've got a Santa Claus of our own, which is different. I'll tell you
Oh, it's
afterwards.
a different one. Oh, okay. I'll be interested to learn about this one.
I'll have one of the questions from over here. Yeah, this one says, tell us about spirituality, the Guardian. Any form of reply, even a poem, years from now is okay. Thank you.
Let me read this just to make sure it actually about spirituality. There's a nice smile at the side of it. Oh, nice.
Couldn't read that.
Oh, you don't have to read the smile. You just have to go.
I'm smiling all the time.
Smile at the side. What is there to say about spirituality? I mean, you can talk about it for a year, and you can just talk about it in less than a second.
I'll give you 4 minutes.
Too long.
3.
Too long. Again, it's like what I was saying earlier. It's whether you believe in that dimension or whether you don't. I mean, one can't legislate perceptions for other people. I happen to believe that we are more than two dimensions. We're more than flesh and blood. Some people think that that's all they are. I think, well, how boring you must be to yourself to just be flesh and blood. Gee whiz. Come on, I demand more. I want to be more than flesh and blood. How else do you explain this rage in me? How do you explain this fire one feels occasionally? Blood and flesh alone can't explain it. That's a poetic response. I don't know. Someone yesterday said they have to believe in it because it makes their life more interesting for them. That's like a choice thing. I believe in 30, 40, 50 years' time we'll be able to prove the existence of a third dimension of self scientifically. God, what will happen to all the rationalists then? You can actually prove that there's a spiritual side to me? Oh yes, and you press a couple of buttons and there it's manifest on the screen. Boom, there goes all the realists. Maybe a new religion made from converted realists.
I'm looking forward to that. Another question. To Ben Okri, since you can describe the spirit world so vividly, I assume that it had an important part in your youth. What does the spirit world mean to you today? And do you believe that we can connect with with one another through the spiritual world?
I'll give this one a really short answer. I think we do. We do, but we don't know it. There are many kinds of confederacies, many kinds of parliaments, many kinds of marketplaces in this world, many kinds of meeting places, and not all of them have got to do with the actual physical places where we meet. But you deal with that. You think about that. You disagree with it if you want. I'm not legislating. I'm just saying that thoughts get passed around on many invisible cables that connect all of us. End of story.
Full stop. And I'll do a third one. Why did seeing the Roman coin, one of your poems just now, remind you that you had been looking for it for 10 years? What was it about, that coin? Thank you.
If I told you, I'd be giving away a secret that would take me another 10 years to deal with. Next question.
It's one of those non-answering questions.
Oh, no, I've given a big answer. That's a big answer.
Okay, here's another big answer required. In the next century, Africa will need our help in many ways. In what aspect can Africa help us in the next century?
In ways you can't imagine.
That figures. Oh, yeah, another one, okay. Dear Ben, were he still alive, or even if not, what would, could, or should your mom and dad say to Joseph Conrad? Thanks, David.
Mom will say, who he?
Meaning?
Dad will say, he didn't come to Africa.
Not finished yet. Maybe Mr. Okri, would you please say a little more about looking at the edges of things, dreams, instead of focusing too much to the center, on the center? Thank you. That's what you said in your introduction, that you...
Oh no, I'm just looking at it just to...
Oh,
yeah.
But you already forgot.
Just to answer the question silently.
Thank you very much. That's a big help. We're really enjoying this.
The center is obvious.
Is it?
Yeah. The center is it's too visible. Everybody's been there. Center is boring. Nothing happens in the center. We think it does, but by the time it gets to the center, it's already dead. The real stuff happens. Just on the margin of vision. It just keeps moving with the margin of vision. If you can see it and it's there, it's dead. If everyone can see it and agree about it, it's dead. It's not interesting.
So all art must come from the edges? Can any good art come from the center?
All art is all art is from the margin.
Write that down, please.
It doesn't matter whether you live in Rome. It's not where the art comes from I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the place, the city that the art comes from, or the continent. I'm talking about where it comes from in you.
So, what's wrong with the center in you?
You know it already. Take it for granted. It's too familiar. Therefore, it's the same sort of thoughts that you share with everybody else. It's boring. The minute you can utter it, it's a central thought and you know it. The minute you utter it and everyone can share it, it's dead, it's boring. It's not interesting. It comes from parts of you you wouldn't call you. The real you doesn't sound like, feel like, or act like you. It's the you that surprises you. It's when you can see your own voice coming out, it's not you anymore, it's dead. You're asleep. It's habit. Move on. Next question.
Okay. In your book 5, 12th chapter in Infinite Riches, you talk about a godlike creature that will create better human beings, and you mentioned that you hope they'll have universal humor. Could you explain that a little more? Universal humor?
Humor that's universal.
Thanks a lot. Better people that have a universal humor. So humor now is not.
Not all humor is universal. Humor is one of the most difficult things to travel, as you know. If you look at the classic texts, it's not the comedies that survive best. If you notice, it's the tragedies. Comedy is very vulnerable to time. Because what made one age laugh doesn't make another age laugh. Whereas what is tragic to one age is tragic throughout. All the big themes, the foolishness of kings, King Lear, the foolishness of fathers, the death of families, the collapse of all those big, heartbreaking, heart-shaking things, those tragic subjects, they cut across. Humor, comedy, much more fragile. Sometimes related just to the tastes of a place. Dutch humor, by the time it gets on a train and changes in Belgium or Brussels and then gets on the tunnel to England, it doesn't translate. English humor kind of perishes in the channel. French humor, maybe just after a glass of wine. After that, German humor. Humor is to travel. It's a good passport, but the visa is vulnerable. Uh, it's like certain kind of immigration sort of problems. Humor is very difficult. In translation, humor dies. You put it in your pocket and share it across the street. It's gone. So universal humor means that we actually have to kind of like look deeper inside us, across languages, across cultures, and find our secret, hidden, marginal, funny bone. That's something for the future. That's something for the future. 3,000 years and we ain't been terribly successful there. Does anybody want to disagree with that? And cite evidence? Because for one great humorous text that survived 500 years, I'll cite you 20 tragedies. What? Who said?
English humor travels well.
Who said? P.G. Woodhouse is only funny in one or two countries or continents outside England. It doesn't carry to certain parts of Africa.
And the Monty Python card is played now.
Well, I've never watched Monty Python in Africa.
You never watched Monty Python laughing?
In Africa. I've watched it in England. You see, maybe it works in England. I have to watch it in Nigeria and see whether I'd laugh the same way. Well, I was actually thinking more of humor in books rather than stand-up comedians or television. Say what?
Much Ado About Nothing from Shakespeare.
The humor there is vulnerable too. It doesn't bring about the same belly laughs as King Lear breaks your heart. Or freezes your intestines. What? Say again? Now that's a pretty good example. That's Rabelais.
Rabelais.
Well,
yeah.
that's a pretty good example.
Don Quixote.
That's partially vulnerable, and I suppose that does depend on exaggeration in a way. That's a good example. I'll take that one, but I could give you 20 other great texts that outweigh that. Any others? Any other brave attempts?
Don Quixote.
Yeah, Don Quixote. The first part of Don Quixote is humorous, and the second part isn't. So it half supports your side and half supports mine.
Gulliver's Travels, Swift.
I wouldn't put that on the humor as such. I put that on the lacerating satire. Falstaff. Yeah, now Falstaff is pretty universal. He'd work almost anywhere. The old rogue. Yes.
Almost Rabelais again.
But for one Falstaff, I can give you 10 Hamlets. What? Chaplin.
Charles
Oh, he's pretty universal. But I don't know how well he wears now. I don't know if we still find him as funny as we did 20
Never
years
read the
ago.
book.
Well,
Another one. You do not need words to convey humor.
yeah, but we're talking books here.
Yeah.
If the next time I'm round and I'm doing wordlessness, yeah.
We'll have a different interviewer then.
Yeah. Okay. Next.
Yeah, okay. How does the writer let the material speak? That comes from your Picasso poem from just now, Lessons from a Master. How can a writer make the same?
This is a writer's question.
Yeah.
By that I mean this is somebody who's yeah. how does the writer underlined let the material speak by not imposing your own personality on the damn thing. They used to say that writing, there's two kinds of writing, one personality writing and impersonality writing. The writing where it's about the writer's personality, and the other writing where it's about the writer getting their personality out of the way for it to come, for the material to come through. I favor this one, getting out of the way. It's much more deceptive and bigger. But sometimes you can actually manage to have a personality for a book that is transparent, or that colors the material interestingly, like a prism. I think it's getting yourself out of the way, not being too insistent on what it is that you want to say in the book. Sometimes the book wants to say something quite different from what you want to say. To let it betray you if it wants. To let it speak against you. To let it get you into trouble. To let it not do anything. Why do books always have to do something?
One of the other lines in the same poem was, be influenced by your materials. It's the same way of making the writer less important than the text.
No, that's different. Be influenced by your material. I wasn't thinking of the writer when I was writing those lines. I was just taking dictation, by the way.
Of course you were.
And Picasso is not here, of course, to say, look, I didn't, you missed everything. That's the beauty of it. I can claim to have be influenced by your material is really I really meant the different kinds of material. In painting, for example, people paint on many different surfaces. In art, they use many different kinds of material. Sometimes the material that you're working on in fiction, in the novel, leads you to places where you had not intended to go. Sometimes your book actually educates you. To let that happen. I don't mean by that if you're writing a book about an architect, that you've gone and done research on architecture and after that you're a dinner table expert at architecture. No, I don't mean that at all. No. I just mean educate you in surprising ways of being. I think you'll get that. You picked that as a kind of theme of mine. Surprising ways of being oneself. That's education too. We're too rigid in what we consider ourselves to be. I can see some faces formulating their response to that. Yeah. Next question.
At the beginning of the evening you told me to let all rigidity go and all planning go, just improvise. We did until now, but we have only got a quarter of an hour left, and I really want you to read a part of Mental Fight, a beautiful poem about the chances we have for the next millennium, and you told me you would read it.
Okay. But before I do that, these questions have been given here, and there are a couple more that haven't been asked. Now, if there's anybody here, you've got two people here, right? Is anybody here who felt the question hasn't been asked? I want to hear voices. I want someone to come to the microphone and speak. Microphone, please.
There are microphones everywhere. Big brother.
Let's hear some other voices.
I was a little disappointed. You answered that you couldn't imagine what Africa could do for us. My son lived for several years in Cameroon. And I guess what Africa can do for us is a joy for life.
Oh, thank you. Well, I didn't say that I can't imagine what Africa can do for you. I said it's ways you can't imagine. But that's a wonderful one, the joy of life. If you'd said that yesterday, you would have been slaughtered. By the way, I got slaughtered when I hinted at that. But I have a miraculous talent for rebirth, you see. Joy of life, I like that. Joie de vivre. Joie de vivre d'Afrique. Yes. Yeah.
And Africa is giving us some excellent writers, so...
One more voice, please.
One more. Please take the microphone.
No. Microphone, please. I want to hear your voice. Speak forth, speak forth.
You can do it.
My brother and I both grew up in Africa, and we're living here now. It took us years to, well, not to forget, but to adapt to Holland. I was wondering, in your vision, what is happening on the edge in Africa now, as an African? Is this something which still moves you, keeps you mentally busy always, or have you become totally British?
Ooh. Ooh, that hurts.
I have to say, I've never read one of your books ever.
Oh, dear.
Maybe you write about it all the time.
Are you from the Palace Committee? Le Brima. Is this one of yours?
The edges in Africa.
Yeah.
And your Britishness.
Have I become...
Was that an answer?
What I feel is happening in the edges of Africa, I'm not going to tell you about, because the minute I do that, I center it. I don't want to center it. I want it to happen on the edges, and I want to draw energy from it and use that energy, but I'm not going to tell you, because it'll put it slap bang in the center, and one or two journalists that are here might go scurrying there and wreck the thing before it happens fully by reporting it, and so on and so forth. Let it just happen on the edges and the margins and grow and fructify and amaze everybody. Thank you.
So these were not all the questions from the audience, and hardly any of my questions on my sheet, but you're going to hear better things than that now. Mental fight.
I don't know, I feel like I'm distorting the rules here a little bit. I did say I was going to read a little manifesto, Ed. You know, you're really well named for this dialogue of ours, Ed. Yeah. You know, Ed is editor as well, don't you? Got invited to Weimar because Goethe got older. He got to be 250. And I suppose my name was pulled out of a hat to go talk about one of the ideas that he had seeded in his great dialogue with Eckermann about the possibility of a world literature. And they asked me to come contribute. And I've always liked the idea. I've always thought it an important notion. Before I read the Goethe, by the way, I was a bit annoyed to find that the old master had this same notion about 100 years before. But I wrote a few lines, and I just want to share that before I read from Mental Fight. Unless, of course, you really desperately don't want to hear this thing. Can we take a little vote on this? Do you want to hear this or not? Yeah? Great. It's pretty short. And just we're living in an age where there's sort of too much nationalism. Everywhere I go, people are talking about their Dutchness and their Britishness and their thisness and their thatness. And I think we should start to, as we approach the 21st century, start to think about something a bit wider than that, while including that as well. So this is called On World Literature. Literature has no other destination or destiny than to belong to all humanity, to unite all of mankind, to come from all of our diverse places and specifics, our nations, tribes, our unique earth, but also to speak to the oneness in us, to the unity in us, to what is human and sublime in us. Literature can only be literature if it is world literature. Anything less is provincial literature, limited, limiting, narrow, and narrowing. The best in us demands to speak to all humanity, to create a world justice, a world joy, a world creativity. Literature ought to be the uniter of the scattered tribes of humankind. It comes from the mind and heart of one reader, one listener, one member of the audience. But in that one, all the world is present. The world is one mind multiplied. End of story. I don't know if I should speak of Mental Fight as being a poem about the millennium, because it isn't. I only use the word once in this poem cycle. But because we're kind of like close to that day, that once just jumps. And all, people refer to say, oh, your millennium poem, your millennium poem. I only use the word once. Give me a break. I use love 20 times and age 50 times. And why are you jumping on this once? It's subtitled An Anti-Spell for the 21st Century. An anti-spell is a spell that gets rid of bad spells. Every new thing needs an anti-spell, because a lot of old things that want to take it over, colonize it, contaminate it, win it for their side, possess it, And we want it to be open. We don't want the 21st century too contaminated with all the bullshit of the 20th century. Are you guys with me, or are you guys dreaming? I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand till we have built Jerusalem. William Blake. I'll jump read some sections. First section, time to be real. An illusion by which we can become more real. A moment unremarked by the universe, by nature, the seasons or stars. Moment we have marked out in timelessness. Human moment. Making a ritual, a drama, a tear on eternity. Domesticating the infinite. Contemplating the quantum questions. Time, death, new beginnings, regeneration, cycle, the unknown. Allow uncontemplated regions of time to project themselves into your sleeping consciousness, inducing either terror or mental liberation. In the same way that death confrontation paralyzes some with despair, makes others poison themselves with emptiness, but releases in a fortunate few a quality of enlightenment, a sense of the limited time we have here on earth to live magnificently, to be as great and happy as we can, to explore our potential to the fullest, and to lose our fear of death, having gained a greater love and reverence for life and its incommensurable golden brevity. So it is with this moment, a gigantic death or an enormous birth. This humankind cannot live long with the notion or the reality of timelessness. Only in the mind, only in the spirit. With us, things must have a beginning. Theater grew from ritual, and ritual grew out of the silence. Here, now, is an origin. We are poised always at the threshold of an unknown, unwritten, unforeseen act. Let's gather ourselves together, clear our minds, make ourselves present to ourselves and to our age, that we be focused on this stage, that we concentrate and listen, that we prepare ourselves in seriousness and with joy. Let's be wonderfully awake for what we're going to create, to make happen in this mass co-scripting of the future. Everyone loves a spring cleaning. Let's have a humanity cleaning. Open up history's chamber of horrors and clear out the skeletons behind the mirrors. Put our breeding nightmares to flight. Transform our monsters with our light. Clear out the stables in our celebrated fables. A giant cleaning is no mean undertaking. A cleaning of pogroms and fears, of genocide and tears, of torture and slavery, hatred and brutality. Let's turn around and face them. Let's turn around and face them. The bullies that our pasts have become, let's turn around and face them. Let's make this clearing out moment a legendary material atonement. Next session I'm going to read to you is called Is Humanity Exhausted? I'm thirsty. Oh, thank you, Ed. Thank you. Are you guys awake? Ladies, gentlemen, are you all here? Are you kind of dropping off? All those great 18th century composers always used to have a bit in their symphony where they have the bang the drums really loud, wake everybody up. It's a shame you can't do that with poetry. Just in the middle, read and just bang a drum and make up. What was that? Yeah, sure. Make it short. I'll answer you afterwards. No, I'll answer you before the evening is over. Is humanity exhausted? Is time exhausted? No. Time is yet young and has timeless millennia ahead, way beyond our furthest dreams. Is nature exhausted? Ask the oak trees, the hollies, the flowers, birds, fishes, and lions. They will continue for as long as the earth allows them. Is humanity exhausted? Individuals are, nations are, some civilizations are becoming so, but humanity isn't. The hungry nations are hungry still. The starving people dream of food. The unfree fight for freedom. The oppressed plan for liberation. The small scheme for might. The invisible prepare for higher visibility. They are only exhausted who think they are. They are only exhausted who no longer have a reason to strive and dream and hope. They are only exhausted who think that they have arrived at their final destination, the end of their road, with all of their dreams achieved and with no new dreams to hold. The exhausted are those who have come to the end of their powers of imagination, who have limited their possibilities, who have thought themselves into the dead ends that they call the highest points of their civilizations. Those who are exhausted have lost the greater picture, the greater perspective. They are trapped in their own labyrinth, their lovelessness, selfishness. For those with limited dreams, there is chaos to come, disintegration, nightmares. I hear them talk about the end of history. But those of us who haven't tasted the best fruits of time yet, to whom history has been harsh, we think differently. We know that history is all there to be made in the future. Exhaustion is a mental thing. The absence of a spiritual viewpoint, a universal vision, a sense of new journeys, higher discoveries. There is no exhaustion when there is much to be hoped for, much to work towards, and where the dreams and sufferings of our ancestors have not been realized or redeemed. There is no exhaustion when you can still visualize a better life for those who suffer. Visualize universal justice, a leavening of the great dough of humanity, uplifting the multitudes. But when you can no longer dream, no longer see possibilities, no longer see alternatives, when you can see only limitation, only despair and negation, then you are in the way. You are also the problem. The exhausted obstruct the creation of a better future. The exhausted should therefore clear the stage for new dreamers, for warriors of love and justice and enlightenment. Thank you. I'll read a short section called Harmony of Politics and Heart. And then I'll read one more, and we just kind of like say goodnight to one another in a long sort of way. Someone's got to invent a new instrument. There's still some kind of sounds, you know, that all the existing instruments don't quite get yet. A cross between the kora and the trumpet, maybe. Or one instrument that combines all 7 instruments. What would your instrument be? Well, when you find yours, tell me. Oh, my publishers. my publishers. My publishers. Harmony of Politics and Heart. Mastery of material problems. No spiritual way can reconcile itself truthfully with the raw wound of starving multitudes. We cannot use the word civilization as long as people die of starvation. Those who do are cave dwellers of the mind. Transmutation of worldwide poverty will be the greatest alchemical feat of the dreaming age. A basic precondition of civilization is a world free of hunger. Cannot be done by charity alone. Symphony of rich and poor nations of the earth. Know them and us. No self-satisfaction. No superiority thinking. Harmony of politics and heart. Rhythms of economics and art. Improvisations on the theme of justice. If the rich go on exploiting the poor, we're talking about cannibalism. If the rich go on ignoring the poor, absolute violence will be the music to such deafness. With all our vaunted glories, we are still largely humiliated beings on earth. It's time we turned our formidable powers of heart and mind to humanity's solvable problems. Problems which have become accusations. This earth is our brief home. Let's put the human house in order. Let's tend the wild garden of humanity. We are better than the sum total of our successes and our failures. The truth is that we haven't really tried. We haven't really gone for it. We haven't really striven for a world of balance and contentment. We are like athletes who haven't really extended themselves. We haven't found out what we're really capable of doing if we put our minds to it. We are functioning below our potential for love, justice, and creating a good world. I read a final. How are we doing for time? Do I still get dinner? 1 minute, or should I want to get dinner. You will. Right. I read from the final section called Turn on Your Light. I understand, yeah. Give my love to your baby, yeah? Tell her Ben said hello. Final section called Turn on Your Light. The new era is already here. Here, the new time begins anew. The new era happens every day. Every day is a new world, a new calendar. All great moments and all great eras are just every moment and every day writ large. Thousands of years of loving, failing, killing, creating, surprising, oppressing, and thinking ought now to start to bear fruit, to deliver their rich harvest. Will you be at the harvest, among the gatherers of new fruits? Then you must begin today to remake your mental and spiritual world and join the warriors and celebrants of freedom, realizers of great dreams. You can't remake the world without remaking yourself. Each new era begins within. It is an inward event with unsuspected possibilities for inner liberation. We can use it to turn on our inward lights. We can use the new era to use even the dark and negative things positively. We could use the new era to clean our eyes, to see the world differently, to see ourselves more clearly. Only free people can make a free world. Infect the world with your light. Help fulfill the golden prophecies. Press forward the human genius. Our future is greater than our past. And because we have too much information and no clear direction, too many facts and not enough faith, too much confusion and crave clear vision, too many fears and not enough light, I whisper to myself modest maxims as thought friends for a new age. See clearly, think clearly. Face pleasant and unpleasant truths. Face reality. Free the past. Catch up with ourselves. Never cease from upward striving. We are better than we think. Don't be afraid to love or be loved. As within, so without. We owe life abundant happiness. Good luck.